Chelsea versus Manchester United. Chelsea have not beaten Man United at Old Trafford since 2013. So how's it gonna go down, and how are they gonna do it this time? Well, let's get into it and have a look, because there's a lot going on with Manchester United at the minute. They've just hired Ruben Amorim, and if you haven't already, go check out the video uploaded yesterday on Ruben Amorim and how he's going to set up at Manchester United, because all the support on that would really help me out as I'm trying to grow the fan base out further than just Chelsea. Okay, so Ruud van Nistelrooy is going to be in charge. This on the left is the Van Nistelrooy team that he first put out against Leicester the other day. On the right, you've got this is the average positions from the game, and I've sort of put the lines in to almost show that 3, the 2 at the base, and then you've almost got one winger coming inside with Rashford. They did switch sides at one point, so it's important to realise that Rashford will often be out wide as well. Dalot almost does a bit of both, and that's why his is slightly more tucked in as well, because sometimes he's providing the width, sometimes he's in that half space with Rashford out wide. But these are the 5 sort of attackers on screen there. Let's have a little look. I've just realised I don't think you can see my arrow. Now you can, which is helpful. Cool. So let's have a little look at how the game was sort of set up. So I've gone back and watched the Man U versus Leicester game. So we've looked at that. Then I've also gone and watched some PSV games from Van Nistelrooy's time there to compile what we may see in this game. Something that I think is important to sort of just recognise going into this game. I don't think we're going to see anything tactically extraordinary from Van Nistelrooy. I think he will sort of look to simplify things, go back to this just very simple tactical mechanisms of a 4-4-2/4-2-4 out of possession, a 4-2-4 from deep build up with the fullbacks wide, which is something we haven't actually pictured in here, and a 3-2-5 building out from the back essentially and working through the phases of pressure. So here you've got that 3-2, quite a wide 3-2. Sorry if you can hear the dog barking in the background, by the way, but that's something that usually happens on live stream. I don't think that usually happens in videos. But you've got the wide 3 at the back. Then you've got the 2 quite narrow pivot, and in this sense, it's Ugarte and Casemiro. Quite likely we'll see that again because Mainu is out injured at the minute. And then in here, you've got that 5 sort of pentagon again. This is because Xerxes in here, so I think that has quite a big role to play, because Højlund, if he plays, I think he'll be stretching a little bit more. And I think as well against Leicester, it's sort of about having that extra man in the midfield to overload. As you can see, they're pressing in sort of that 4-2 for Leicester. So I think that's quite an important detail. But as you can see, quite a simplified structure. Again, the 3 at the back, the 2 pivot. You've got Rashford coming in deep here. So this pass is about to come out to Dalot, who's not actually on screen. But that shows that Dalot's the one holding the width on this side. And then out here, that's Bruno here. So out here, you would have had Garnacho. They're the ones providing a bit more height and depth to the side. Just had to quickly cut the recording there just to go and make sure the dogs were okay. So we're back. Get back to what we were talking about. So in this scenario, this is one that I wanted to highlight because, again, we've got this basic structure in the middle. But here you've actually got Dalot in field. And what you can't see is Casemiro. And this is what led to one of the United goals. So again, if you wanted to draw the lines, you could say this is technically your back 3 here, a very wide stretch back 3, but then you do have Ugarte in case that ball does break to cover. You've then got Dalot pretty much in that pivot role where Casemiro was, forming that box with, it's actually Xerxes on this occasion and Bruno. So again, you've got Garnacho out here, you've got Rashford who's quite wide out here too, you've got the box in the middle, but then you've got that free man who would usually, again, be in this sort of half space or forming that pentagon, but instead you've got that box in the middle, which leaves Casemiro in this lovely little bit of space that's really hard to sort of pressure, and it almost looks like a 4-1 and then the 5 ahead of that with Rashford out wide. But as I said, it makes Casemiro very hard to pressure, and it looks like this is something that a little tactical, a minor coaching adjustment or tweak that Van Nistelrooy sort of applied. And it's one that a lot of coaches use to get one of their better long-range passes on the ball to be direct. And by doing this, like I say, Dalot infield, Dalot pushed up into the half space, you get Dalot, who's a bit more of a technical sort of move players. but you get Casemiro facing forwards on the ball and able to pick the pass forwards and make something happen with direct passing. And again, he gets that ball in behind. I think it may actually be to Dalot or maybe to Rashford, but he gets that ball forward and United go and score from it because these pressing distances on Casemiro are very far. It takes these players quite a while to get over to him because he's in a very unattached position due to those rotations with Dalot. And that was a nice minor tweak. And I do think these are the extents of the tweaks that you could see against Chelsea. It won't be anything too sort of extravagant, but you may see the odd little rotation to try and free up one of their better long range passes, which in this case is Casemiro, with the sort of experience that he's got, with all his shortcomings in the last sort of six to 8 months, even 12 months. There's still aspects of Casemiro's game that many would want to utilize, and because he's going to be in the team, this is one that I think you could see. But a lot of people want to know the out of possession structure. Here is a series of 3 images. 4-2-4 was very prevalent in the PSV games that I watched for Van Nistelrooy, and it's a bit of a 4-2-4/4-4-2 sort of hybrid pressing system. Again, very simple, very easy to coach, something that they were already kind of doing and they've already kind of done. So it's something that won't be too hard to sort of apply and get across to the players. Quite a narrow back 4 here for Man U in this occasion. The pivot quite deep, slightly unattached in this case. But if we move on a little bit, you've got, again, that narrow front 4. They're trying to cut these gaps, the biggest passing lane really being here. But again, it's actually covered really well by Ugarte. Again, a staggered pivot. The 4 actually slightly more stretched now. These passing gates between the fullbacks and centre-backs slightly larger, but that is due to the width being held by Leicester. And I think that's going to be a very important thing, which we'll speak about on the tactics board, is Chelsea holding that width and looking to stretch those fullbacks out and really isolate those fullbacks 1v1, because I think Madueke and Neto, or even if it's somebody else starting out wide, I think they can really get at the fullbacks and make stuff happen against those. And then also, if you're going to look at where the space is within this press, these 2 are very narrow. The back 4, not the most mobile back 4. Manchester United, especially without Lenny Euro, they're not the best at stepping into these zones. They can do it, but it is where they will be sort of, they'll give up spaces and give up little balls in behind or give up those sort of mistakes in and around these areas. This is where the space is. Chelsea have been excellent at putting their number 8 in these little pockets here to receive the ball from this back 3. Again, you got that 3, you got the 2, you got the wide men. But these 2 players here, instead of being so central behind, if they're a bit wider in these gaps here, these 2 are really struck for what to do. And that will cause, I think that you can cause both those pivot players for Manchester United, with the lack of mobility from, other than Ugarte, if you've got Casemiro, probably De Ligt, Martinez, Dalot, and Mazraoui, I think you can cause them a lot of issues, especially with the likes of Jackson. This is a bit of a deeper example. You could call this a 4-4-2 if you wanted to draw the lines here instead and have the 2 here. But again, a bit of a 4-2-4, 4-4-2 hybrid, out of possession, a little bit deeper, as I said, in their own half. The 2 pivot players very deep here. Again, they're getting split in this occasion. So this would allow Jackson, for example, when he's sort of come over into here and he's watching that space, Jackson will be able to receive in and around this sort of area, something that he does extremely well already. This is something that we do have to stop, though, and it was a feature in the PSV game too, and the PSV games that I watched. They will look to get that ball out wide and isolate those wingers, especially on the side that is usually not on the same side as a fullback that's pushed forward. So what I mean by this is, as I said earlier with Dalot, if Dalot is pushed forward on one side, they would usually play more focused towards that side of the pitch, sort of overload over there, to then switch and try and get it out to the nominal winger who's going to have more 1v1 quality. So in this sense, it's Garnacho. But if we look at this sense, I think that's Bakayoko for PSV. And the idea then is to get them 1v1, and that's where they're going to look to create. And I think United will look to do that with either of Rashford or Garnacho against Chelsea as well. So it is important that Chelsea are sort of alert to this. They don't overkill on one side of the pitch. And I think that's something that's not been great about the defensive system for Chelsea so far this season, is those little lapses of concentration, especially when the back 4 is very narrow and teams are allowed to quickly get into these areas and even get the first 1 or 2 touches away into this space before somebody can apply pressure on the ball in those wide spaces. So I think that's going to be a very key aspect against this Van Nistelrooy's Man United side. Here you've got sort of a 4-1-4-1 pressing system as well. A bit like what we do, really, for Chelsea. Bit of a staggered height in the middle. The wingers are dropping a bit deeper. I don't think they're going to press as much in this 4-1-4-1. I think it'll be more of that 4-2-4, 4-4-2 sort of hybrid. But I did just want to highlight this because this was something I saw with someone like Sangare in here. So this could be Casemiro. Then you could have Agate and Fernandez with the two wingers, and then of course Højlund or Xerxes. So that's something to take into account. But again, I don't think they're going to play that deep against Chelsea at all times. And I think if they do, it'll be more of a 4-4-2 pressing with Agate and Casemiro looking to almost man mark Palmer, and then whoever inverts into the middle, which I'm expecting to be one of the fullbacks inverting as a number 8 again. So Cucurella, Gusto, Reece, for example. We touched on that. Again, just showing the width that PSV side had. And this is something I think United will have. Nominal winger, fullback in this occasion. And they're just trying to really stretch the pitch, make it hard for those players to sort of apply pressure in all areas of the game. Again, overloading on one side of the pitch, the idea to try and get it out to here so he can attack his man, which is actually stepping infield at the time. And that's something that I do think they're going to try and do. I think that's going to be quite a heavy thing that Chelsea need to stop in this game. One other thing I wanted to point out is sort of in this 4-2-4, you often speak about this hexagon shape. And with the PSV side, you started to see that this could actually be quite nicely like tight knitted, and they'd really form quite a good sort of spacing around the double pivot. At Manchester United right now, I don't think there's been enough time to fully, and even just with the, like I say, with Casemiro, the mobility issues that I think there is within the squad, and even the likes of Rashford, who's had sort of some choice words about him in terms of his pressing abilities and his work rate off the ball. I do think that these gaps will be slightly wider against Manchester United. I don't think it will quite be as compact as this. So I think that is something to look out for when playing against them, and to try and utilize and get into this pivot if those gaps do appear, because there will be points in the game where these stretch slightly wider than they want to, especially because it's undercoached and undercooked for Manchester United in comparison to his PSV side. 3-2, we spoke about this at the start, very similar that we'll see. The fullbacks pushed on in this scenario, you got the 3-2 base, and then the last image to leave it on is more so that deeper 4-4-2 block, which is something I do think we will see a lot of. But again, it'll be Agate and Casemiro, and I do think there'll be man-marking jobs on the likes of Palmer and whoever is inverting into that space. So let's go over to the tactics board now, discuss what we think we might see from the Chelsea squad, what Maresca might go for, and how a few players could be the difference makers in this one. And we're on the tactics board now. So how could Chelsea line up? Again, we've put this almost this 4-2-4 system into place just so you get a slight idea of how they could press in this game. I've gone for the Lavia Casado pivot again. Enzo hasn't been great lately. We're going to speak about it. I'm not worried about him at all. I know the player that he is, but I don't want to get into that in this video. But I do think that you continue to persist with this midfield too, especially when we can completely overpower the pivot, in my opinion, of Agate and Casemiro purely on just engines and legs. So these two could be massive in this game yet again in terms of duels and winning those sort of half chances and those second balls. Like I said earlier, I think having Palmer and I've gone for Gusto again in the half space because one, he didn't play the other day, whereas Cucurella did, and two, I just do think he's better in that position, higher up the pitch, and I think he's got the technical ability. I've said it in the past. He's a fullback, don't get me wrong, and that is what I love about fullbacks nowadays, the modern sort of iteration of fullbacks being able to mould and platform other players, and I think that's what Gusto does so well. I think he can play anywhere on the pitch. I think he's just technically good enough to even be a number 10 just out and out because he's just that good on the ball. So we're going to have him in here, which is what I expect, which is why I do think that these two players here and here are going to sort of be taken quite deep and really just trying to stop any progression into these players, which is going to, one, allow Chelsea to control the game a little bit better, because by doing that, we're going to have a 5 versus 4 in this front line. So that's going to allow them to sort of control the ball a little bit better. And I think Chelsea will look to control this game, the tempo and hold possession. And then it will become about, well, if there's no space to progress into these two, which is what, again, this is a prediction, One, can Jackson drop into here and can he receive the ball? Again, that sort of pentagon shape that we spoke about before from Maresca. Jackson's brilliant at doing this. If he drags a centre back out with him, especially with the mobility of these two centre backs, if it's going to be De Ligt and Martinez, I think Jackson can really test them in terms of grabbing the ball, doing what he does best, and spinning on the ball, and then driving forwards and attacking the box himself. So I think he could cause these centre backs some really big separation sort of issues in the middle of the park, dropping into these spaces created by 1 and 2. The other area of attack is if Palmer or someone can drag this man inside, and again, vice versa, if Gusto does it too, the access point could then be to be out wide, sort of miss this man when you've rotated the ball to one side of the pitch, get the ball over, can you get out to, say, Neto? And then, again, like I said, if you can isolate either one of these two, 1v1, I really think you can get some joy against this United side, because Mazraoui and Dalot, I rate them, they're technically proficient fullbacks, and I like them for that reason. But especially defensively, 1v1, I think, and even mobility and sort of athleticism, I think Madueke and Neto can really hurt them by just getting at them and being direct. So if you want to pinpoint those real sort of gaps of where you're going to hurt them, I think Palmer's in this game. I think it could almost be beneficial of him to be the sacrificial lamb and to just have his movement be the main factor that he plays in this game, of when to take Agate away so Jackson can receive, when to, or Casemiro, for example, when to take them inside so that there's an easier passing lane out wide. I think his movement between the lines and sort of manipulating this middle two, same for Gusto, is going to be really important in this game to allow Chelsea to pinpoint the exact areas of attack that United are not going to like, which is the two wide men and then Jackson in deeper pockets. This isn't to say Palmer's not going to pop up and score a goal, because we know how good Palmer is. So I'm not trying to say he has to be the sacrificial lamb for the entire game, but I think that's going to be a massive part of this game, is what I'm trying to say, is it might not just be about his sort of star quality passing and an amazing shot or finish that he makes. It might actually be that his biggest contributions are from off-ball movements, which is something that is harder for some fans to recognise, especially opposition fans, obviously, if they're looking at Palmer for sort of goals and assists. There's actually been some big games this season for Palmer where he's not had the goals and assists or the GA, but he's been able to apply himself in a different way and make space for others. So it will be interesting to see the lineup that we go with. The one I've got on the screen is what I expect, but of course there's other options. You could see Mudryk on one of the wings, who I think's been improving lately. I think he was one of the positives the other day. Cucurella could be in, which could have Reece in for Gusto and have Cucurella over here, Palmer over here. The reason I've gone for it this way is, again, to have Colwill in the middle. I think that that's a massive part of playing Reece as that left centre back, so that Colwill can still be the central centre back, and then you still have Fofana as that right centre back who can be a little bit more aggressive and jump up. So I think that we might stick with that. It'll be very interesting to see. I think the interesting one will be, does Cucurella start? I think that's probably the biggest one to watch out for in terms of what may happen. But apart from that, I'm not going to do a whole sort of tactics board session on the out of possession for Chelsea, because I think it's going to be fairly sort of simple in the sense of we're going to control the game. I think we have to manage those transitions. And I think, as I said, I think you just need to make sure that you stop those wide isolations in transition, especially for those United wingers. Like we touched on in the analysis part when we was looking at the pictures of someone like Garnacho getting the ball out wide and being able to take 1-2 touches before a player can apply pressure on the ball. So they're the things to watch out for in this game. Let's see how it unfolds. We'll be back on, when would it be? Monday, for the things we learned from this Man United game. As I said, if you've made it all the way through this video, please do drop a like, please do subscribe, and please do go and drop a like and a comment, or let me know on the other video that I did yesterday for Manchester United on Ruben Amorim. As I'm trying to expand my audience wider than just Chelsea and sort of, again, just improve the content and see where we can take it from there. So please do. All your support is really appreciated on those videos, as well as the Chelsea videos, which will never stop. They will always continue. That's going to be a main hub of content for this channel for the foreseeable future. So do take care. Hopefully Chelsea get a win in this game. And I'll see you guys on Monday for the things we learned. Up the Chelsea. See you guys next time.